We're living in an age that feels like one long struggle. It's as if we're trapped in a world that operates on Machiavellian principles, where the good guys seem to suffer, while the ruthless navigate their way to success, unhindered by morality. The bad people often disregard ethics entirely, chasing their goals with no second thoughts. At the same time, nihilism has spread like wildfire, leading to widespread depression and a general inability to see the beauty around us. Many people exist in a sort of void, feeling like their struggles and lives don't really matter. But even in this bleakness, Fyodor Dostoevsky, the Russian philosopher, gave us a glimmer of hope. Through his character, Prince Myshkin, he wrote, "Beauty will save the world." In a world heading toward what seems like a tragic end, Dostoevsky was pointing to beauty as a source of salvation. But what does he mean by beauty? There are countless interpretations of this line from Myshkin, but I have my own, which I'll discuss in this video. I'll be talking about Fyodor Dostoevsky here a little bit, because there is no other philosopher who spent as harsh a life as Dostoevsky, a life full of suffering, and this same suffering was portrayed as the definition of beauty, and he put this in his characters too. His mother died of tuberculosis when he was just 15, shattering his childhood. Soon after, his father, a harsh and authoritarian figure, was reportedly murdered by his own serfs, an event that haunted Dostoevsky for the rest of his life. Forced into a military academy by his father's wishes, Dostoevsky found himself trapped in a life he did not want. He yearned for literature, immersing himself in the works of great writers. His passion eventually led him to abandon the military and pursue writing, but his success was fleeting. While his debut novel Poor Folk was well received, his later works failed to gain recognition, plunging him into financial distress. His struggles deepened when he was arrested in 1849 for his involvement with a group of intellectuals who discussed socialist ideas. The Tsarist regime saw them as a threat, and Dostoevsky was sentenced to death. He stood before a firing squad, moments from execution, only to be spared at the last second. Instead, he was exiled to Siberia, where he endured 4 years of brutal hard labor, starvation, and the constant presence of criminals. Even after his release, hardship followed him. He battled epilepsy, experiencing terrifying seizures, and fell into a gambling addiction that left him in crippling debt. He was constantly fleeing creditors, struggling to support his family, and at times, writing simply to survive. Yet through all this suffering, Dostoevsky created some of the most profound literature in history. He believed that only those who suffer truly understand the depths of the human soul. His pain was not just a burden, it was the source of his genius. And in all these sufferings, he wrote The Idiot, published around 1867. The novel presents two significant characters, Prince Myshkin and Ippolit. Myshkin is portrayed as a wholly innocent soul, while Ippolit is a young ill man who embodies nihilism. Myshkin is, in many ways, an embodiment of Dostoevsky himself. A man at whom problems were thrown one by one, but he only accepted it and lived a rather better life than all other characters in the novel. The opposite was Ippolit, who attempted suicide in the struggles of his life, mentally and physically. The difference between both of them was how they took suffering. One saw it as beauty and part of life, and the other saw it as the opposite, which ultimately led him into nihilism. And nihilism is nothing but a way closer to depression and suicidal attempts. Leo Tolstoy, a famous writer, felt this depression too when he was in his 50s. But ultimately, he faced those existential questions that were meant to make him a better human being. And like them, we all have to go through this process of suffering, and according to Dostoevsky, this exact process is a form of beauty, and that those who endure such hardships become works of art. He believed that true beauty is transformative precisely because it has the capacity to absorb and transmute suffering. In his view, beauty does not deny or escape hardship. Rather, it acknowledges suffering as an integral part of the human journey. This idea is evident in his portrayal of various other characters as well, such as Raskolnikov in Crime and Punishment, and Dmitri in the brothers Karamazov. Through all these characters, Dostoevsky was admiring suffering as it allows individuals to find value in what they endure. Through suffering, one can achieve a deeper understanding of compassion and forgiveness, transcending the bitterness of pain to recognize beauty in its transformative potential. We have all seen examples where people have turned into some of the best individuals in history by facing those struggles. As Dostoevsky quoted, "Pain and suffering are always inevitable for a large intelligence and a deep heart. The really great men must, I think, have great sadness on earth." Viktor Frankl, an Austrian neurologist and psychiatrist, was a Holocaust survivor who endured unimaginable suffering in Nazi concentration camps. In his book, Man's Search for Meaning, he discusses how finding purpose in suffering can lead to personal growth. Frankl believed that even in the harshest conditions, one can discover beauty and significance in life through love, purpose, and spiritual resilience. Muhammad, peace be upon him, ranked by Michael H. Hart as the most influential person in history, endured significant suffering throughout his life. In a world filled with inequality and racism, he witnessed the brutal realities faced by the weak and women, including the burying of newborn girls alive. Yet, he found beauty in everything. He never lashed out at others, but absorbed the hardships thrown his way. Ultimately, he succeeded in his mission and laid the foundation for the rise of Islam and the era of the four caliphs, ending racism and giving rights to women. Helen Keller, deaf and blind from a young age, faced tremendous challenges throughout her life. However, she became an author, activist, and lecturer, advocating for the rights of people with disabilities. Keller found beauty in her experiences and used her suffering as motivation to educate others and promote social change, leaving a lasting legacy. Other than this, beauty can be portrayed through another angle which I find very interesting. I found it when Gregor Samsa clung to the portrait of a woman in his room when his family was cleaning his room. A man who turned into a giant insect, but still a man, ignored and tortured by his family, was only seeing beauty in that portrait. There was hope in his mind that maybe this touch of humanity would bring his life back. Just like Samsa, we all tend to search for hope for a better world. Whenever some of us are in tension, we tend to go for a walk, to a garden, or to hike, to see the beautiful nature. That is one other kind of beauty, which gives us a reason to live, a meaning to our lives, which seems to be the message of Dostoevsky. One thing I like most about Fyodor Dostoevsky and Leo Tolstoy is their positive attempts to make the world a better place. Although the characters seem to be very troubled at first, in the end, they wanted to give a reason, a meaning to every one of us. In Crime and Punishment, Raskolnikov was a killer, a nihilist who wanted to be Nietzsche's Übermensch at first, a powerful man like Napoleon. But soon, when he was caught and the guilt and shame overtook him, he turned into something meaningful, which gave him a reason to live. The last part showed Raskolnikov's belief in God. In the whole novel of The Idiot, Myshkin was a good soul, although being seen as an idiot. Dostoevsky was trying to portray a Christ-like figure who remains positive amidst life's hardships. Tolstoy's My Confession is similar to that. The man was in an intellectual crisis, almost thought about ending his life. There was suffering in his mind, and what saved him? The faith. He gave away his wealth to the poor, wrote the wonderful masterpiece Anna Karenina, where he showed himself as Levin, a man who was first rejected by Kitty, and then, again, faith made him a successful person in the countryside. He started living his life with Kitty after marriage. Anyways, this was the message of Dostoevsky to all of us. Sufferings, when faced with a brave heart, turn into something meaningful and beautiful. Instead of running away from it, we should just accept it as part of our lives. It grows us and makes us more experienced in our lives. Charles Dickens said something about this. Suffering has been stronger than all other teaching and has taught me to understand what your heart used to be. I have been bent and broken, but, I hope, into a better shape.